Daniel?
Yes,
Giving it
we're ready.
10 seconds more. Hi, I'm Lisa Parsley. I'd like to call to order the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative Executive Committee meeting. And as I've already announced, I'm the chair. I'm a Olympia City Council member. I'm just going to hopscotch around the screen. Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Cox. I'm currently the alternate for Lacey, but if Robin doesn't get here, I'll be the lead. And
Hi.
Hi, Mentor representing Thurston County.
Do we have Tumwater?
Yes. Yes. Eileen Swarthouse, City of Tumwater.
Oh, you're sitting there with Alyssa.
I
Very cool.
am.
Very cool. The alternates, Robert.
Robert Vanderpool, alternate Olympia.
Do we have any other alternates in the room? Okay. Staff members, do you want to kind of go through? Oh, wait, Kim, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Kim Piper, CAW representative.
Thank you. Staff members, do you want to go through?
Sure, I can facilitate that if you'd like.
Good.
Chair. Hi, everyone. Pamela Braff, staff with City of Olympia. Also, and I'll just go to Lindsay next.
Lindsay Fields, City of Lacey, Climate Sustainability Coordinator, and Alyssa.
Hi, Alyssa Jones-Wood, Sustainability Coordinator for City of Tumwater. I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Excuse my technical difficulties. Rebecca Harvey with Thurston County Climate Mitigation Senior Program Manager. And I will go to Dominic.
Hello, Dominic Jones, staff with City of Olympia, and I'll pass it to Julia.
Hi all, I'm the Community Energy Fellow with Thurston County.
That's cool, Julia. That's cool. Okay, we also have some guests which we will introduce as we get to their portion of the meeting. I'm just going to lay a few ground rules because of the sake of time. While there's only 3 major agenda items, we are just going to have the delegates from the jurisdictions have the conversation. If you are an alternate, you feel like we need to have a burning question asked, please text your lead person for your jurisdiction and they can ask it or turn it into you. Okay, with that, let's see about approval of an agenda, please.
I'll move to approve the proposed agenda.
I'll second.
Second. Any changes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Same sign. Okay. Approval of the previous meeting summaries. I'd love a motion.
Move approval of the July meeting summary.
I'll second.
Okay. Any changes, edits? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Sorry about that, Ty. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Now it's time for public comments, and I'm going to turn this over to Daniel. And before I do, there was an email that had some written public comment that Daniel sent us from Thad Kurz and Timothy Leadingham, just in case you didn't.
Hi, everyone. So we'll be entering our public comment time. Currently, we only have one person signed up for public comment, and that Tom. So Tom, I'm going to move you to be a panelist. And then just a reminder, please keep comment to 2 minutes.
You all hear it okay?
Yeah. All right, Tom, you are good to go.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you for all members of the executive committee and alternates and staff for your great work on climate change and addressing this problem here in Thurston County. I just want to let you know, Thurston Climate Action Team, which I'm a member of the board, will be holding our, again, a South Sound Climate Action Convention in May. On May 17th is the date we've selected for it. And so I hope you all put it on your calendars. I think it'll be a very, we haven't, this is, I think, the first time since 2019 that we've done this. And we, you know, there was a big interruption, as you all know, with being able to get together in person for a while there. So May 17th is the date, and we're really excited about getting together with the community again. And the theme, we're still sort of hammering that out, and we're also still hammering out the location. But the theme will be along the lines of you know, bringing the community together for community-wide collective action. We know this is a critical moment for achieving the goals of the climate mitigation plan. And we're at a point where we can make some very important decisions to move that plan forward in an even better way to get us closer to the goals in the plan. So anyway, it'll be around community-wide collective action to implement the climate plan. So thanks for letting me share that with you, and hope we'll see you all certainly before then, but at least in May, you know, for our convention, we'll all get together and have a little bit of a celebration, as well as, you know, getting down to work and figuring out how we're going to get more stuff done. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. All right, and I believe that is all we have for public comment.
Excellent. I can't wait for that convention, Tom. I'll just call it out. I loved going to it before the pandemic, so I'm glad it's coming back. Good on you guys. We're going to move on to the committee business, unless there's announcements, and I haven't heard that there's going to be any, which is agenda item 3. So we're moving on to agenda item 4A. And we've been having the last couple meetings of our steering committee, community partners that have been doing climate work. And I've actually really enjoyed these, because I think we get into our bubble as jurisdictions and we don't realize that all these others amazing groups are doing work, like intercity transit and the lot water treatment plant. So tonight, or this afternoon, we're going to be hearing from Thurston Conservation District and Thurston Economic Development Council. I'm assuming we are going first with the Thurston Conservation District with Stephanie Bishop. Is that correct? Stephanie.
Yes, that's correct.
Yay, thank you. Sorry, Pamela.
Yeah, so you guys ready for me?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, great. I'm gonna share my screen, and it's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So yeah, my name's Stephanie Bishop. I am with the Thurston Conservation District. And my role changed about a year ago. We started a community sustainability program. And so I've been working with that for the past year or so, and really happy to touch base with you all and share some of the things that we've been up to over the past year. I always like to start out these presentations because I know not everybody is familiar with conservation districts. So there is a conservation district in about every county in every state across the United States. And we were developed around the 1940s as a response to the Dust Bowl, when natural resources really weren't managed very well. So here in Thurston County, we've been around since 1948. And we've been working with agricultural producers that entire time. But what I really love about conservation districts is that we are nimble enough to be able to quickly respond to changing needs and requests from the community. And I'm not going to be talking about this too much today, but we are doing that through things like wildfire protection. and developing site visits for folks related to that. It's not typically an area we've always worked in, but it is something that our community is needing, and so we've been doing a little bit more of that. But what I'm going to talk to you guys mostly about today are the ways that the district interfaces with the climate mitigation plan. Primarily that's through agriculture, forest, and prairies. And just as a reminder, the slice of the pie that we have in greenhouse gas emissions, according to that 2018 greenhouse gas emissions study, is about 2%. So I'm hoping my piece of Thanksgiving pie is bigger than that. But for greenhouse gas emissions, we're one of the smaller contributors. That said, there's a lot of work that we can do and are doing to shrink that and make sure that doesn't grow for sure. So related to practices that are reducing emissions, primarily we're talking about nutrient management, thinking about farms that are producing large levels of manure. How can we prevent those emissions from getting worse? And so the couple of things that we've been doing or that we have done historically really start through conservation planning. So this is going out to farms, creating a customized plan that takes into consideration somebody's soils, the livestock or the crops that they're trying to grow, and then making a plan of action for them. And those plans often include BMPs, or best management practices. And the BMPs related to nutrient management that we often recommend are, include things like spreading manure on one's property. So being able to take that manure, which is really a tremendous resource for a farm, and allowing it to spread out onto a farm, onto a pasture, for example, where the plants can just take that nutrients up. The problem is that oftentimes if you have a small farm, you don't always have $30,000 to put down for a new piece of equipment that you might only use once a year. So TCD has a tool and equipment rental program where we purchase that expensive piece of equipment and then rent it back out to the community at a really low cost. So over the last year or so, our manure spreader has been used on about 131 acres by 18 unique users. We also work to find funding for farms to implement practices like this compost structure that you see on the bottom of the slide. This one in particular, well, so this one is so what the features that we're looking at here is it's covered, so the rain won't leach all the nutrient away. It has a concrete slab to prevent it from infiltrating into the ground. So those are kind of water quality related BMPs as well. So there's a lot of crossover between what's good for water quality and also, what's good for farms and how we can reduce emissions. This one's kind of cool. It aerates the compost. This one's brand new. I think it was only signed off on in the last year or so, or I'm sorry, month or so. And so the aeration speeds up that whole process. The other thing I want to mention about in this area here is a grant that we recently got through Department of Health, which is working in the Eld watershed and focused on manure management. In particular, I'm excited about a manure exchange feasibility study that we're going to be doing in that watershed that we can translate through to the whole county. We've had manure exchange programs in the past. It's kind of been hit or miss. There've been challenges with it. And so this is going to allow us some time to really talk with the community to see where the barriers are and how we can rethink our manure exchange program so we can get more users of that manure and the producers to feel comfortable sharing it. Okay, so then we're going to move on to some of the ag practices that are really sequestering carbon. I'm sure folks have heard of this topic of regenerative agriculture. It's really looking at the whole farm approach, focuses a lot on soil, protecting the soil resource, keeping soil intact. And so some of the things that we do related to regenerative agriculture This past year, we purchased a no-till drill. This is another one of those pieces of equipment that can be really expensive for an individual to purchase. So we purchased it and have been able to share it with the community. Tilling is a process, of course, of aerating the soil, removing weeds, and getting a field ready for planting, but it doesn't always need to happen. And it often can include, when you're tilling, it can cause soil and soil erosion. It can release greenhouse gas emissions. So by using a no-till drill, you can just punch your seed directly into the soil and avoid some of those the negative aspects of tilling. The good news is this has been used on 80 acres already. The bad news is we've had a little bit of a it's undergoing some repairs right now. So once it gets back up and running, I think we have a wait list of 7 individuals who are ready to use it. So we're ready to get that back out in the field. And then kind of along the lines of the soil protection and carbon sequestration in the soil, we do a lot with our soil and nutrient testing program. So this is an opportunity for individuals to bring in a sample of their soil, let us know what kind of crop it is that they're wanting to grow, whether it's fruit trees or pasture or whatnot. And then we send those results out to a lab. But what's really great about TCD's soil program is that we take those results and we digest it for them and help people by producing a report that really goes through custom recommendations and helping them get their soil to where it needs to be. So we often say, if you're not testing, you're guessing. So the first step in knowing how to take care of your soil is knowing what's in it to start. Some people request results only for those, but we did produce 275 soil reports, and about 75% of them requested organic recommendations. So we give them the option of conventional or organic. One of our most popular podcast episodes, if you don't know, TCD has a pretty cool little podcast, but we have a podcast all about soil health, and it's, yeah, like I said, it's one of our most popular ones. We're also working a lot on hedgerows, which is the establishment of dense vegetation in a linear design. You see these a lot in Europe. If you've ever been to Europe, you see hedgerows kind of tucked away into little places along the roads. It's a great way to add diversity for pollinators, habitat for birds and amphibians, but it also is a great way to add woody material into a very small space and helps a lot with carbon sequestration. So lots of co-benefits to hedgerows. They're also really popular in the community. We did a podcast with Erica Gutman from Native Plant Salvage Project, so you can learn all about hedgerows if you're interested. We hosted a hedgerow webinar with 52 attendees, and then we hosted 2 hands-on workshops with a total of 38 people attending. And then we were able to install hedgerows at 4 local farms over the past year. We're also doing a little bit with agroforestry and silvopasture, so related but different topics. Agroforestry is the growing of trees and shrubs in combination with crops or forage. So we hosted an agroforestry webinar with 50 attendees, a podcast with Patrick Schultz from WSU, forester with WSU, and then 2 workshops with 47 attendees in total. And then silvopasture is the establishment of trees and pasture, kind of like the picture that you're looking at right now. And yeah, we had a silvopasture workshop with 46 attendees and recommended silvopasture as a practice on 5 properties. I also wanted to add in a little bit about our urban garden program. They hosted a cover crop workshop this past September. And I always think about, I know this wasn't really part of the mitigation plan, but I always think about the closer that we can grow our food. If I can walk in my backyard and get my food, I'm not having to drive to the store. So I did include this. They added 320 square feet of new growing space this past year, and have rehabilitated 256 square feet of growing space. And Many of these are within the tiny home villages. So they supported 179 tiny home village residents and donated about 400 pounds of food to the food bank. One of the biggest changes for TCD this past year has been the development of our forest health program. We hired a stewardship forester. His name is Alex Chacon. And he has been busy since he started in March of 2024. He's already responded to 49 requests for assistance, encompassing about 366 acres, completed 26 site visits, and he's got about 19 pending in progress, and a little bit of a wait list. He's been working a lot on thinking about keeping forest land in that forest land designation, and preventing forest land conversion, which is a growing threat for Thurston County. So he's really trying to connect landowners with incentive programs through NRCS or DNR, and encouraging folks to complete their designated forest land applications. So he has one already completed, and he's working with 3 additional landowners to enroll in that program. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how many trees we have planted at the Thurston CD in the past year. We've put in about 3,200 trees and shrubs, 875 live stakes, and 1,185 herbaceous plants. And then between now and the end of 2024, we are on target to plant another 1,131 trees and shrubs, 100 live stakes, and about 1,200 salt marsh plants. And then I'll just mention, in terms of prairie restoration, we work with a lot of different partnerships that are all working towards prairie restoration. And when you think about prairies in Thurston County, they're predominantly located in the southern portion of the county, which also tends to be where a lot of our agriculture activities are also happening. So we work closely with folks like NRCS and WSU and Eco Studies Institute to find ways that we can manage prairies and agriculture at the same time. And I'll just highlight the top, which the Washington Coast Restoration and Resiliency Initiative, or WCRI. One of the really cool things that has come out of that group is a grazing plan template, which is really customized to protecting the soil resource, that fragile soil resource that occurs in the prairies. And so lots of partnerships, lots of engagement, lots of recommending folks with prairie lands to land trusts, for example, to help protect those soils as well. And I think that's all I have. I think going into 2025, we are going to be looking more at fine-tuning the way we're tracking our metrics. So I'm happy to take recommendations or suggestions on that, and also happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Committee, is there any questions? Go ahead, Ty.
Just a comment. The hedgerows piece that Stephanie mentioned, we had that Erica Gutman, who she mentioned, that program is supported by the county through the Washington State Extension. And we had a presentation from them, and they created a book that I'm not a gardener, but I looked at it pretty carefully, and it was super impressive to me. So if you're interested in learning more, or kind of doing this kind of work, or looking at it for potentially your own land, it's a really cool thing to take a look at that they produced out of that program. If I'm wrong on that, Stephanie, correct me. But
I haven't seen the book, so I'm going to go look.
Oh, okay. Well, take a look. And I'm glad I mentioned it, because you should look at that. It's really, really cool.
I love hedgerows. They're just like, they're like, I feel like, like a power bar or something. There's like a lot of great stuff happening in a really small little package. And so I think that's why they've been so successful and popular in the county, because people see all those co-benefits.
Eileen, you'll have to jump up and down if you have a question, because you're about a quarter of an inch big. Do you have anything while I'm putting you on the spot?
No, it sounds real interesting though. I want to learn about hedgerows, so I was just going to Google that.
Carolyn?
No, but I'm so glad to see the conservation district thriving after going through some hard times a few years ago.
Oh
This
man,
is really, really exciting to me.
you and me both. Yes, it's nice now.
Yeah.
The conservation district just had a tour, and I was able to go on it. It was pretty much the whole day, and we looked at different projects on the ground that they were working on, and had presentations from staff. Met their new forester that Stephanie mentioned, and I mean it's just awesome what they're doing. So I'm really glad Carolyn brought that up because it wasn't quite working all that way when I joined the board. But we've just got great leadership, and they're just the partnerships that they've built, are just they're a powerhouse basically right now. And I want to lean into everything they're doing because it fits into this plan. It fits into so many things that the county's working on. So they're just a super partner of ours.
I tend to agree. I've watched the evolution in the last 3 to 4 years. It's fantastic. I love all the work you're doing. It's so fit into what we're doing. I have one question, and this comes out of California, and maybe it's my veterinary background too. But when they were looking at the dairy farms in California, what they discovered was the highest rate of methane emissions from these farms was actually the silage, not the manure. And I changed legislation that was going to require methane capture out of the barns and where the manure was kept to include silage and actually make that more of the focus of the legislation. Have we done any of that work?
I'll have to go back and ask our ag team specifically, and if I find something out, I'll let you know. I know we're losing dairy farms in the county, so there's maybe 1 or 2 left. We're probably not as big as maybe other parts in, like maybe even California. So I don't know the details on that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, silage is the mixture of grain and fiber for cows, both, and it can be just not just dairy, but it also can be small ranchers that are doing intensive herd work. So I know there's some of that in Thurston County. Just to let you know, there is a study out there saying you should be watching that because it kind of went undetected until they went to look at methane emissions.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's interesting.
I think it's because it starts to compost as it sits there.
Right.
In big piles, waiting for them to feed the cows.
Right.
So this is really good. I'm sorry I asked that question, but it's been burning, because I know California is addressing it. I don't know that Washington is.
It's possible that they are, and I just haven't heard about it. But yeah, I'll do some sleuthing and I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, great. Yeah, I keep doing it. It's great. It's fun to watch, and you're a great partner. All righty.
Thank you.
If people have questions, can they write you, Stephanie?
Oh yeah, of course. I can put my email in the chat.
Great, thank you. All righty, we're going to move on to, it looks like Michael Cade and Jean Angel. I'm looking forward to this too. I always impressed at what all our partners are doing. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to be here and discuss what we're up to. And we think Jean and I, as we were putting together these slides and discussion for you, realized there was a strong an alignment of the work that we do and the work that we understand that you're endeavoring to take on. What we'd like to talk with you about a little bit is provide an overview of the Economic Development Council and our Center for Business Innovation. Want to talk a little bit about how we feel the entrepreneurial network of Thurston County is growing. You can take advantage of it and how we want to be supportive of it. But also dovetail that into a kind of the work that we have been doing. It's great to see Tom Crawford on the comments. He was part of the leadership group that put together a program that we called Thurston Energy of a number of years ago that came out of at the end of the last Great Recession, and how we leveraged that into growing kind of an awareness about climate action, but also how the Economic Development Council and business can participate in a supportive way. So that's the conversation we want to have with you today. And we have a number of slides. I'm sorry to kill you by PowerPoint, but we're going to go ahead and keep that theme going. And also great work by the Conservation District. They have just been fantastic, and it's kind of a throw a bouquet their way. Been a great partner of ours as we talk about the work that we do in South County and the rural parts of the community. It's just fantastic to have them as a partner. I'm going to share my screen. It's this one. Share. So I'm just going to do a process check. Can you all see that screen? Lisa, can you see that? It
Yes.
says,
Yeah.
oh, you
Yep.
can. Okay, good. Again, that's Michael Cade. I'm the executive director of the Economic Development Council and our Center for Business Innovation. Joining me is Gene, and I'll have Gene introduce himself when we get to his slides. But he is our director of research and evaluation. One of the things we wanted to leave with you is how your Economic Development Council operates. And one of the significant components of work that we have taken on in the last 10 years is the notion that we need to understand and want to understand and put those understanding together for a work plan of the data and the research that it happens to be the Thurston County economy. Gene is leading that effort for us, and how we make sure that we're making decisions based upon building a quality, positive community and economy. So just an overview for those of you, as we're a little bit different in the organization. As I introduce myself, executive director of the EDC and our Center for Business Innovation. We actually technically are two nonprofit organizations. That's not necessarily the important message I will leave to you, but the notion is that we decided about 20 years ago to split our work and recognize the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we wanted to have in Thurston County, and make sure that we're driving resources into that effort and growing and sustaining small businesses. The DNA structure of Thurston County's economy is based upon small business, and the vast majority of business in Thurston County are small. And so why don't we spend our time leaning into that work? The work that Gene will be talking about and research that we've undertaken is the notion, how do we support that and make sure that we're looking at an entire ecosystem of the economy? A couple of these slides, this slide is, it's not important that I talk about every one of those circles, although I could. I don't want to do that because we'll be here all night. But the idea is that all these platforms are available at no charge to our business community and entrepreneurs, small or big or startup or whatever it is. We design these programs with the notion of how do we serve and support the private sector, the businesses that need to grow. And not only that, but how do we make those connection points between the public sector? There's a connective tissue between the public sector and the private sector. And all these programs, if we talk about them at length, you will get the idea that they're not undertaken lightly, but they're undertaken with the notion of creating that connective tissue between the private and the public, and how do we grow one which supports the other. A couple of these dots I would call attention to you. One of them is the Southwest Washington Food Hub, the notion that we want to work together to ensure that we have a food supply chain and organize our farmers and our producers and growers so that they can access local markets in a very proactive way. And we've done that. And some of the work that we do actually extends into Lewis County, Pacific, Grace Harbor, and Mason counties, a little bit up into Pierce County as well. That Southwest Washington Food Hub that you'll see right there in the middle really is a notion that we want to work with farmers to expand their markets so they have a confidence that the crop and the products that they're growing and producing have a local market, and we build that up. The other thing that I would also call attention to is this dot that I'm circling here with the cursor is the Southwest Washington Agriculture Business and Innovation Park. It's a mouthful. We're trying to figure out what the name it will be, but if you go down to Tenino, you'll see a couple of buildings going up right now. We'll have the ribbon cutting in December, January, and we'll be full of producers that will use the small space I intended to process their products, their agriculture products, and push out into a market. The other thing that we'll ask them to do, and we provide those wraparound services, that all of those other dots and circles are intended to support them to push out those products and find those markets, but also endeavor into workforce training, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a sweet thing. When you think about the economy of Thurston County, excuse me, there's about 13,000 businesses in Thurston County. And what we want to do is make sure that this ecosystem here is building on our entrepreneurs, the startup businesses, and they have a relationship with how they support and participate in the local economy. So again, it's not important that we talk about each one of those dots, but know that there is a connective tissue amongst all of those resources in that ecosystem. This is give you a little bit of snapshot. And so what, Kate? So what do you really do? Boy, we do a lot. So this slide is intended to provide you with the notion of who we serve and what's the volume of clients that we serve. And again, this is all technical assistance that we provide. It's one-on-one business assistance. It's counseling for business retention, what we call business retention, expand market opportunities, expand that employment base, and expand the veracity of business to ensure that they're solid and they're viable and they're taking advantage of all the resources that we have. And I won't read the numbers there, but when you start thinking about the total output of your Economic Development Council, about $476 million worth of economic activity came as a result of our activity. So if you strip our organization away, that's what's going away with that if you strip us out of the equation. About 2,300 total interactions. The interactions all are not necessarily just a phone call, but they are really the time spent with businesses to help them to launch and grow and expand their markets. And we've created some other products that we haven't talked about to have them platforms to do that. Certainly the Lacey Makerspace is a big significant piece of that. So people have opportunities to test and create prototypes and also create small limited batch manufacturing of products and resources to do that. So when you start thinking about, when I tell the business all the time, when you think about the Economic Development Council, don't think in terms of 1, 2, 3. We think in terms of 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. It's an exponential conversation that we want to have with folks. A little bit of a history. Coming out of the recession of 08, 09, we partnered with TCAT to create the resource that we called, the program that we called Thurston Energy. It's a great program. But interesting genesis, we won't get into how it came about, but an incredible partner with TCAT. And we start thinking about our role in that is that we always seek out non-traditional partners or unconventional partners that you would think don't necessarily are successful. But what we found was let's focus on the quality of life and the quality of community that we want to have in Thurston County. And the role of the Economic Development Council is to support that through grant-funded activities. The notion that we want to create an environment so residential homes or residents are highly energy efficient. We provide the resources and also the energy audits for homes. We did about 1,500 homes. There's really a little bit more than that. We canvassed, I think, 80% of all homes in Thurston County at that time. We had actually a couple of individuals that had to go out and knock on doors. Hey, I'm Thurston Energy. This is what we do. This is the funding available. We created some funding mechanisms with a couple of local credit unions to provide the financing, low-cost financing so folks can put in those energy efficiency products into their homes to do that. When you think about the private investment is, $2 million, pretty significant return on investment back to what the cost of that program is. And then the other thing is, jobs created, it's at 25 there, but that really is a light number. What we found was, and this is the hippity hop for my board of directors and our leadership, was the notion of could we grow and sustain businesses in Thurston County that are focused on energy efficiency if provided the impetus or the leverage and the little bit of leadway to start that business. And what we found is that we did launch businesses that were basically focused 100% of their energy and time, their focus of their business plan on energy efficiency. It was a beautiful thing. It was cool because we would create the backdrop, the support. We'd wrap around the services for technical services, technical resource to grow and expand a really strong business. And then they would go out and be engaged in that market as well. It was a beautiful thing. And that program ran basically the money ran out at the legislative session. We were federally funded. Those funds came out. We got some money from Washington State University through the legislature, and then those funds, and then we actually had to shutter the program, unfortunately. But we had at one time 10 individuals that were focused. 100% of their days was focused on Thurston Energy and energy efficiencies in Thurston County. Gene?
Great, thank you, Michael. So just a reminder, my name is Gene Angel. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation here at the Thurston EDC. I think most of you have had the opportunity to hear me speak, so you know that I typically do somewhat of a grandstanding style. That's not today, no grandstanding today. Well, we'll see. What I really wanted to remind you of is that, hey, Thurston County, we're kind of a popular place. Both the last 10 years and the next 10 years, we really are, by population, the fastest growing county along the I-5 corridor. And I've got some metrics here up for you. But I just want to remind you that growth is coming no matter what. We are not in control of it. No one is. But what we are in control of is how we respond to that growth, what policies we put in place, and what strategies we implement. So, you know, just to frame the conversation, right? We're gonna grow, we have to grow, and we're not in control of that growth, but we are in control of our own actions. Fastest growing in the next 10 years. So how do we grow for our future, right? You know, I was at a small conference that TRPC put on last week. I think a couple of others were there, and it was really about how are we going to get train connectivity and transportation connectivity to the broader region? How are we going to work in concert? Different agencies, how are they going to work in concert to do that? And to be honest, I was kind of frustrated. I kind of left that conference a little bit frustrated, because one of the metrics to determine whether or not we were ever going to be eligible for a commuter rail or a light rail system really had to do with the number of individuals that lived here per acre. And we just don't have the density for it, according to these metrics that are put out by the feds, right? And here's where my bias is. I'm a train lover and a bus disliker. So I want to get on that train. That's what I want. And, you know, as we sort of continually talk about issues, whether it's issues of housing, climate, or transportation, I keep coming back to the same thing. We just don't have the density to act efficiently. Okay, well, I think that's where we should change, right? The future of development here, in my opinion, really is density. How do we get more people living in less space? We know we need 50,000 units. That's what the GMA requirement set down for our county. And goodness, wouldn't it be incredible if we could get on a real commuter rail service and get up north or get down south, have walkable neighborhoods and transit-oriented development? Now, I was on the TRPC's Climate Mitigation Advisory Group, and my recollection of that group is they really found that the two main sources of emissions were buildings and transportation. Okay, in my mind, dense development has something to say about those two problems: building emissions and transportation. And I would encourage you to remember that you have a best practice standard bearer in our Economic Development Council. And I promise you that if you want to create a market environment where these types of buildings can go up and be successful and be built, you're going to want a powerful economic development partner in that process. We can be that partner. And because this density issue is the intersection of all of these types of problems, I would really encourage you to think very closely and very clearly about the ways in which we can help throughout that process. If it really is this Venn diagram where density matters to all of these topics, can't ignore it, right? So let us help in that process. Let us be part of that solution for you. The other thing that I would say is, remember, like Michael said, we have a breadth of services, a breadth of opportunities for individuals with good ideas. Look, you can bring a good idea to the Economic Development Council, and you can bring a good idea to a good business plan, to a good funding source, to a good business, right? There's a whole through line that you can go from idea to a real meaningful outcome here for Thurston County residents. And if we're going to build all these buildings, we're going to have a really robust construction sector. Again, we've got a great network of partners, a great network of technical advisors. We want to solve this problem. We want to be a meaningful contributor to the solution. The more that we get to work with you folks on these types of problems, the better it's going to be for everyone. And I just want to remind you that our Economic Development Council is a little unique. It's a little unique in that we have 2 full-time staff researchers. Other economic development councils do not have that. Both myself and our research coordinator, Connor Tipke, we work for you. We are here to help answer the questions that you have about your economic curiosities. What the heck is it going to do if we build 1,000 acres of solar farm? Right? What's that going to do to the economy? Those are questions that we could meaningfully contribute and answer to. So whatever your interest is, I promise you that there's some sort of actionable insight or data or conclusion that we can help empower. We can help give you some sort of insight into that problem and peel that onion layer back just a little bit for you. So that's really it for us. I just wanted to reiterate that, we want to be a proactive partner with you. We've spent quite a lot of time and effort in building a network and a partnership network, as well as having served a huge number of businesses, right? And we want to be part of the solution. We want to talk to you, and we believe very strongly that we have a place and a role in this conversation.
Let me get this shared screen off there, my friend.
That's good. Then we can all see each other.
Yeah. Where is it, Gino?
That button up there.
Oh, stop share.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I've just concluded is the notion that, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, was that you actually are sitting in the middle of a very strong and robust entrepreneurial world. I'd like to, obviously it's the work that we do, so we're going to claim it, but that's not true. We as a community will claim that because there is in motion here a notion that we can grow businesses that are innovative and that are about solving problems. We didn't go through that roster of businesses that we've helped kind of generate to that level, but think in terms of Washington State is looking in this direction as an area and the region that grows and is an innovative community. So glad to be a part of it and glad to be part of a partnership and kind of work with you to support the work that you're doing. So thank you. Any questions or comments? Certainly, I'd love to have them.
Excellent. Committee, anybody have a question?
I do.
Hi. Oh, and Eileen. Okay.
Go ahead. I'll defer to Eileen.
Eileen.
I was on the presentation about the Thurston Energy. So that program no longer exists with EDC. Is that what you're saying? That the funding had run out on that one?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it was funded originally by the ARPA when the Obama administration, then it was funded by Washington State through the legislative, and then we self-funded it for 2 years, and then I just couldn't keep it funded anymore, so we had to shutter it. But yeah, we closed it about 5-6 years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ty?
So yeah, like Jean's information about density and the fact that we may be, even though we're growing fast, we may be like missing some critical benchmarks that's what I understood you to be saying in terms of trying to qualify for transportation options that would greatly enhance economic development opportunities. Like that's information that at the county level, when we're, even though we're growing, we only have a certain number of people coming in. And if we, we often hear, because of the high number of housing units we need and the under-resourced county budget, we often hear arguments that we need to liberalize development in the rural areas, that we need to expand urban growth area boundaries. So if we're ever going to get to the target, if it's so important to get to what Gene's talking about, you're going to have to help us argue against some of those proposals, because even though, I know we all want to support economic development, and I know you guys probably have, that in your DNA, but these choices have to be made. And if it's important enough to get to what Gene's saying, and I think he's probably right, then we're going to have to put that analysis into the decisions we make at the county, because we're the gatekeepers of urban sprawl. And if we don't do our jobs well, with these large principles and large goals in mind, then I think we fail the community. So I'm happy to hear that you guys have data and resources and champions within your organization that, I'll probably be calling on to make those types of arguments when we've got these, proposals that are teetering on the edge. And that could be the deciding factor as to why we hold the line and say, no, we need to really not expand here. We need to try to get Thurston County where it needs to be, so we fit into the larger economic ecosystem of Pierce County and King County and Portland. Maximize our advantage for all these things. But we don't do that when we just kind of sprawl out into our rural areas.
Thank
Those
you.
are great comments. Carolyn or Kim?
I'm good.
So I to riff a little off Ty, I mean, ICLEI, International Climate Group, says that the best thing as a city we can do, a region, is densify and more density. It sounds like our transit options are also linked to density. My question has been, some of the, I guess, markers to say that high-speed train should come into Thurston County is is that based on 2005 data, 2010 data? And then my second part of that question is, because we know that the idea about transportation and what we should be trying to achieve is evolving rapidly, partly because it is, I think, 25-30% of our carbon footprint. But also the chicken or the egg, as they found in Portland, getting mass transit and light rail out into areas that didn't seem to have the density requirements led to density becoming high in those areas. And we do have the capital. So how are we calculating in car trips to Olympia that are turning around and leaving? They may not be living here, but they're coming to our state government, and then they're turning around and leaving to north and south of that using I-5. So how do we factor in car trips that go up and down I-5 every day in terms of commuters, maybe not linked 100% to our density?
I think this is you're getting at kind of one of the preeminent issues in my mind, and I've framed it slightly differently. I had the privilege of traveling through Portugal last summer, and as a part of that, I got to go to a bunch of very small towns that all had really great train stations. They were all connected to each other inside of a vast regional network where people were able to move between those towns, right? And I'm going to tell you, they didn't have those density requirements, right? It certainly did not look like Overlook Station or King Street Station in those cities. So I think that you're speaking to kind of a larger issue, which is, hey, do we just follow the reality of some policy wonks number guidance, or do we sort of step into this role of planning for the future regardless of exactly what that number looks like? And this is why I was kind of frustrated with the the conference that I went to last week. This idea that we're going to be 30 years away from hitting this number, and then that'll start a 30-year construction process, that didn't sit well in the old tummy for me, right? So I think that you're spot on with that. And thinking about that transit-oriented development question, I mean, that's really what you're getting at there, right? You put a station somewhere, the investment comes. That's a beautiful thing, right? It's sort of self-evident that markets will move in the areas where public investment is put. That's just, I think, glaringly obvious to everyone. And I cannot imagine thinking to myself as a developer, oh, well, but they didn't quite hit that density number. They're a little bit below that density. I guess we're not going to put any development there. That just does not seem reasonable to me.
I think the other, if I can just, I know you other things to talk about. I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much time. But 5 years ago, we had the opportunity to participate on a recruitment case. Don't really talk about it a lot, but it really was the Hyperloop program that is being proposed. And so we thought, well, let's go ahead and take a flyer at this thing and see if we can't compete with this. And we actually found out we got over the first hurdle, the second hurdle, and the notion wasn't necessarily density. It was opportunity of investment and opportunity of entrepreneurship and innovation. And that's how we pitched this thing. Was not necessarily we got this huge density and then we're going to move people, but the idea is that you can develop here and you can develop this program here and take advantage of the network that we provide. And we actually were number 2 in the nation. We lost out to a site in West Virginia. The notion is that we wanted to promote Thurston County as a home for innovation that solves problems. And that as we kind of move down that path, we can certainly find that we have the competitive advantages to do that and use the resources we have locally and leveraged resource to do that. And so I think I bring that up with the notion that we don't really know what's coming down the pike at us. We have to prepare ourselves to respond, and we have to prepare ourselves with the ability to do that critical analysis to say we can do this and it's important and we're going to make an impact. So I just want to kind of a notion there, Lisa, about that was a great question, because how do we actually position ourselves to participate in a different type of development? Maybe we're not thinking what we're capable of. We have those opportunities and we have the resource to do that. So
I'm 100% in agreement with both of you. And I'm also looking at 2 very large bridge projects that are planned for I-5 over the Columbia River and over the Nisqually River. And if we don't get a consideration for engineering in the design for light rail to be carried over these bridges, you're right, Jean. It could be like, oh, now we need it. So now we're 20 to 30 years away from building a bridge over the Columbia River or Nisqually to connect us to Oregon and so forth, and up and down I-5 within Washington. So absolutely agree. And I think we should look into how can we leverage regional legislative agendas to start really speaking to, let's look at what we're designating for areas and regions that should be targets for high-speed train and high-speed transit for our communities, and how do we develop density around this idea instead of using antiquated numbers. So I think it would be an interesting regional legislative agenda item.
I agree.
Okay, any other questions? That was fun. Thanks for coming, you guys. That was great. And reminding us we have another partner, just like with Thurston Conservation District, we should be reaching into.
Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we are moving on to 4B, Home Energy Score Model Ordinance Update with Alyssa Jones-Wood from Tumwater. Are we ready to go?
Yes, I am. Let me just get this into the right configuration here. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for having staff here to give you some updates today on the 2 different regional initiatives. I am going to be speaking to one of them, the Home Energy Score Model Ordinance Update. I'm going to shrink all the little faces here so I can see everything. Sorry. We've made some progress. In January, we presented the project plan to the executive committee, kind of a roadmap of where we intended to be and what we intended to accomplish at what time. Between January and May, staff worked on the background research and policy memo. And in May, we provided that policy memo to stakeholders, starting with the Community Advisory Work Group. We had a meeting in May and in June, where we got a lot of feedback from the community advisory work group. And then in September, we held 5 focus groups and did some interviews. And now we're in the process of refining the draft, or kind of starting the draft and putting it through our leadership committees. So the tasks that we've completed from the project plan so far is we've executed the interlocal agreement for the 2024 regional initiatives. We have completed a market assessment and policy research. We've proposed policy goals and code concepts to the CAW, conducted those 5 focus groups with key stakeholders, interviews with existing program managers, so people throughout the country that have home energy score ordinances, got some lessons learned, some things that they won't do again, and some things that were really strong about their programs that they encouraged us to also incorporate. We drafted a supporting program plan, including a budget, which was then put into each of our respective jurisdictions with our budget requests for either the annual or biennial budgets, depending on which jurisdiction. And we've drafted a model ordinance and routed it to jurisdiction leadership for review and comment right now. Some highlights from the focus groups. This is in no way all of the things that we heard. I think we have a 30-page notes document that we're still sifting through. And our consultant, Confluence Communications, will be putting together a focus group summary once we have our last focus group, and that will be made public. But some of the highlights that stood out in my mind, there was a strong inclination of time of listing versus time of sale. Folks did not want another septic inspection process. Time of listing was preferred. We also heard from a lot of people that this home energy score ordinance would add another step in the process of selling a house, which is already cumbersome, and it would, quote, add noise to the transaction. But ultimately, it would provide for more home financing options with the Energy Spark loan. But that was a serious concern of many about adding more stuff to an already complicated process. We also heard that if the home energy score program is voluntary, people won't do it. Home energy score is not an exhaustive way of assessing energy in a home, but it is a sufficient assessment of home efficiency. That we also need to include information about incentives and programs and Energy Spark loans on the report that comes out, so that people have actionable information and they're connected with those resources that are available. We heard from an affordable housing nonprofit that they would have especially loved to have gotten this information prior to buying some very inefficient units, and that poor and working class folks don't have money to pay for a home energy score. So any funding that we need to subsidize this needs to be upfront funding rather than a rebate. New homes in Washington are built to a high energy code standard, and they're likely going to score well. And in some cases, they have a HERS score, which is a higher score, more complicated and in-depth score than a home energy score. And anything that will increase efficiency and reduce demand helps our local energy utility. We did some interviews with those providers, and we heard some interesting feedback, including everywhere has a voluntary home energy score program right now, and nobody is doing it. Kind of a chicken and the egg. Do you have the workforce to provide this? That's just here if people care to do it, or do you have to have a requirement so that the workforce is able to actually stay in business? A voluntary home energy score program, these are things, again, that we heard from the interviews. A voluntary home energy score program is not worth the staff time that would have to be spent to run it in terms of outcomes, that we wouldn't get adequate outcomes to warrant the staff time being put into it. A mandatory program with no enforcement is better than no policy at all. That the home energy score ordinance and the intent is a consumer education, consumer protection, and knowledge tool, that we can create workforce development pathways with local higher education institutions. There's a really great model in Eugene, Oregon for this. And that if we require home energy scores, Northwest MLS will create a form and a required field. So some of the policy concepts that we brought by the CAW and the focus groups and the interviews is regional consistency and coordination. So better to have a consistent program throughout the region than have small differences or large differences, to keep it consistent. That home energy score, the Department of Energy home energy score, is the assessment type. That we have custom energy reports for our region that enables us to have those incentives and that information there on the report, so people have the information and then what they can use to make it actionable. That it be mandatory disclosure at time of listing real estate as opposed to a voluntary disclosure, or a time of sale, that it's mandatory disclosure at time of listing real estate, that the home energy score ordinance applies to all suitable housing types, which right now do not include things like stacked multifamily and mobile homes or manufactured homes, but may in the future, so that this score would apply to the buildings in which the score could be applied to, which at this time would be single family up to cottage housing, quadplexes, so on and so forth, attached ADUs, that there would be exemptions for distressed sales, that we would have low-income assistance provided directly by the jurisdictions, and that we wouldn't have the effective date start until spring 2026 to allow time for education for the realtor community, the real estate community, consumers in the area, as well as building that workforce to make sure that we have an adequate number of home energy score assessors in place at the time. At least one jurisdiction has shared that their capacity to enforce such an ordinance is a limiting factor, and staff team still recommends that disclosure be mandatory to ensure desired outcomes and community benefits. And we're using an example that actually Northwest MLS provided us of a similar disclosure, but not for home energy, for noise in Island County in Oak Harbor, Washington, where they require disclosure about noise at a time of listing real estate. That also triggers a required field in a form for Northwest MLS, but that there's not really fines or a timeline for when people will follow up. So this makes it so that it's still required, and it creates a pathway that this information would need to be provided for listing a home, at least through MLS, which would capture a great number of homes. And this would make it so that maybe the enforcement issue isn't an obstacle that people can't get over in terms of the jurisdictions that are anticipating struggling with that in terms of staffing. So the next steps that we have for the home energy score model ordinance is one more focus group. We heard from folks in the focus group, and we reserved one focus group on purpose to capture the people that we didn't realize that we needed to talk to, but now realize that we do. So for instance, some of that, those people are underwriters, insurance underwriters. We had some concerns about that, as well as the UTC, people from the UTC, different stakeholders that we didn't initially think about, that through conversation and listening, we realized that we need to talk to as well. So once we finish up that last focus group, then we can summarize what we heard in all the focus groups in a greater, more standardized manner than what I remembered and put on a highlights slide. We'll then have open community review of the draft ordinance. We'll then revise the draft ordinance and the supporting program plan based on what we hear in terms of that community review and feedback. Jurisdictions along this time will also adopt budgets, with hopefully with funding for this program. Briefings to jurisdictions and advisory boards, committees and commissions will need to happen, as well as an additional briefing to you all, the EC and the Community Advisory Work Group, or the CAW, with the final draft that will be brought to jurisdictions. And then the final step in this particular part, not in the implementation of this, should it be adopted, is the jurisdictions considering ordinance adoption. So here's kind of a next steps timeline here. So right now we're in this CAW meeting, jurisdiction leadership meeting timeframe for the rest of this year. We'll bring the draft ordinance back to the EC in January, and we'll also, if the jurisdiction has a planning commission, for instance, we'll be making a presentation there. Then jurisdiction committee presentations, for instance, in City of Tumwater, it'll either be our Public Works Committee or it'll be our General Government Committee. And then March and April, adoption hearings, which I realize not all jurisdictions have first and second readings. That was my bias from Tumwater for this slide, but having those adoption hearings. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'm going to stop share though. You all already have our contact information, so happy to answer any questions that you may have about this particular update.
Anyone want to jump in? Kim, you're representing CAW. What's your general impression of the reception of the Community Action Work Group on this?
From the CAW perspective or from the community that I talked to?
CAW's perspective.
So they are in support of this, and I've shared what I know from my real estate background in required fields and what portals actually distribute out to the public. I think the current feeling of the CAW is they would like to even do more, but this is a start, that they understand the home energy score is a way to raise awareness and then connect homeowners and building owners with the resources to improve, instead of it being, and I think well, it's been repeated several times, and Alyssa just repeated it, that voluntary programs don't work. You know, that's pretty, they just don't. So, and I'm kind of coming around to a mandatory program, and, you know, I'm not going to vote on anything. It's all you guys that are going to be doing this, but enforcement does cost a lot, but you can still make it mandatory without having an enforcement place, because sometimes it costs more to collect fees and penalties, the whole infrastructure to do that, when really what we want to do is attract building owners and homeowners to this. So instead of make it punitive, so how do we attract? Make it mandatory and then streamline that process. So a lot of the work, you know, CA, I'm a little bit different than some of the members of CA, but they're actually a really high functioning group at this point. There's a lot of people that know a lot on that in the CA group. So, but I live in a couple different worlds, so I have a different perspective from my realtor world or the builder, investor, developer world as well.
Well, that makes you in some ways the perfect spokesperson right now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Committee members, any questions? My one question, Alyssa and Pamela might be able to help me with this too. And I don't think I'm the only jurisdiction that is worrying about our budget in 2025. Do we have an estimate of when assessments, if we were doing first and second reading in March, April, when the impact to the budgets would be, and hopefully that would mean it would be less than a full year, I guess is where I'm going, as also the finance chair for my city, trying to make sure I understand budgetary impacts?
Yes, we are planning for an effective date of spring 2026. So we would not be incentivizing or providing that subsidy for low and moderate income folks. And that, again, is at a jurisdiction by jurisdiction discretion. That would be in spring of 2026. And I'll give an example. City of Portland, much bigger than any of our jurisdictions, they set aside $4,000 for this kind of subsidy and did not spend nearly that much. Granted, they did have $4,000, so it's not a large chunk of budget to provide these resources to low and moderate income folks, but having some money set aside at the jurisdiction's discretion to provide that resource to make sure that everyone can have access to that information.
Thank you. Carolyn, you're muted.
Thank you. Lacey City Council no longer has committees, and I'm pretty sure the county doesn't have committees either. Is there any chance for Lacey to get this into one of our work sessions for a presentation?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
Okay.
And Lindsay and I are the co-managers of this particular project. So either they or I or us together would be able to do that.
Yeah, we're working on a timeline, and I'm working with leadership at Lacey right now to figure out when to bring this to a work session or to start getting it in front of council. Next year is going to be a really tight schedule for everyone, and so there probably won't be time before the end of the year, but definitely early 2025. We hope to. So right now I'm just trying to get leadership updated on, you know, what a model ordinance looks like and get that in front of them so they can get eyes on it as well.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Ty feels about it, but I just think it's really important that those conversations happen beforehand.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of conversations over the next few months around this at all of our perspective, through all of our perspective government pathways. So, yeah.
And we're trying to align them so that we're all adopting or having the adoption hearings at about the same time, but there's still several months before that.
Rebecca.
Yeah, I can just add a similar comment that I am working with the county manager to bring this forward to the Board of County Commissioners, hopefully in December, for a discussion.
Cool.
And Pamela, I would be saying this is a study session for early in 2025, because if we're going to go for first and second reading in March, we don't want to go to a subcommittee, get delayed. I think it needs to stay at council if you're going to have that timeline.
Yep, we're looking at early 2025 as well for Olympia.
Great, thank you. Yeah, because we still have subcommittees, and sometimes they're really, really good, and they can chew things and get a finished product. And sometimes when you need to move faster, they can be the wrong place to keep it. So I see what you're saying, Carolyn. Any other questions, comments? This was good.
I'll just
Well done, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Ty.
I don't have any questions because Rebecca gave me kind of a thorough overview before the meeting, but I just want to compliment staff. I mean, the way this is unfolded, what I saw, it looked really appropriate and well done. And I want to thank TCAT too, because I think we had a head start on this particular one because they did some stakeholder work that I was part of 2 or 3 years ago. So I know we weren't starting from scratch. So based on their work, and then it seems like staff laid out a good process. So I'm pretty happy with kind of where things stand. And we haven't talked about this at the Board of County Commissioners, but I'm looking forward to doing that with a a well thought out proposal before us.
I want to second your comments and thank yous to TCAT, because yourself, I think Carolyn was at some of those meetings too, and so was Pamela, and being able to hear this groundwork to get everybody agreeing to certain goals. And that included real estate agents, developers, mortgage companies at that time, if I remember correctly. So I agree. This is great work, staff, because that's actually a pretty fast turnaround for getting to an ordinance, or at least consideration of an ordinance, I should say. So that's pretty good. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, are we ready to move on to Energize Thurston program update? And it looks like it's you, Rebecca, on deck.
Okay, can everyone see my slides and hear me okay? All right, so I'm providing an update on our second of the 2 regional initiatives for 2024 that focused on residential energy efficiency. And this one is the Residential Energy Efficiency and Electrification Campaign, which we have now given a title, which is Energize Thurston. And the meeting packet for today includes a memo summarizing the campaign development status and the launch and implementation plan, which provides details on Energize Thurston structure and processes. We are presenting this plan as a working draft because as we move forward, we're continuing to learn and do stakeholder and partner engagement. So we may make some minor adjustments as we work toward the launch in early 2025. So I'm going to provide an overview, and then I will turn it over to Dominic Jones at City of Olympia to share some of the details in the launch and implementation plan. So Energize Thurston 2025 is a countywide campaign that aims to make it faster, easier, and more affordable for Thurston County residents to purchase and install efficient all-electric heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. We are not starting from scratch here either, like we talked about with the previous initiative. We're building on and expanding local and regional programs. Most directly, we're expanding the City of Olympia's current, they're in their second year right now of the Energize Olympia heat pump group purchase campaign. So we're really modeling after a similar model, but expanding it to the countywide level with 5 jurisdictions participating. We also heard today from Economic Development Council, and Michael shared about their partnership with TCAT a few years ago to roll out the Thurston Energy Program. So just wanted to acknowledge that we are building on and continuing to learn. I do want to speak more with you, Michael, as we move forward. We spoke a little while back to hear some of the background of your previous program that was so successful. We want to make sure we're aligning and learning from you as much as we can. We're also building on a regional partnership with King and Pierce counties, cities of Seattle and Olympia, to roll out a wider regional campaign for home electrification called The Switch Is On. And of course, this is a TCMC regional initiatives that contributes to implementing key strategies in the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. So to summarize the progress we've made since the beginning of the year, I think in any detail, the last time we spoke to the executive committee in detail about this campaign was in January of this year, where we presented the phase 1 project plan, showing you what we're going to do to design and develop the plan. We also presented the same plan to the community advisory work group in February. In February, we partnered with the regional jurisdictions to launch the Switches On web platform. And then through the spring and into the summer, the jurisdictions were really working on developing our state and federal grant applications to fund the campaign when it launches. And then moving into the background research report, and that is it's actually posted now on the website, on the Thurston Climate Collaborative.org website, and under regional initiatives, we're starting to post some of our deliverables in there. In August, we were very excited to onboard Julia, who introduced herself. Julia Downing is our Community Energy Fellow, and she's we're getting her up to speed. She's really, staying busy helping the staff team develop all the aspects of Energize Thurston, and will be serving as the main point of contact for the campaign when we roll it out next year. And so then these last couple of months, we've been working with our consultant Confluence Communications to do some stakeholder engagement. And then we have just developed that working draft of the launch and implementation plan that you've seen. So I'll share a few highlights from the stakeholder engagement. First of all, we conducted an online survey about home electrification. We were able to replicate many of the questions that the Switches On used in their pre-campaign survey, but they, since it was a 3-county campaign and they didn't do a huge survey sample, I think they only surveyed about 30 folks in Thurston County. So we wanted to get more responses from our residents. I will emphasize the caveat that this is not a scientific survey. This was a voluntary online survey, just in the interest of time and available staff resources. We just pushed it out through social media and website and partners. But it still does provide valuable data into how residents think about home electrification. So we were able to receive 165 responses. We had a nice mix of income levels, which is a relevant factor to this topic, to this campaign. But not a whole lot of diversity, unfortunately. Otherwise, we did look at the zip codes. There were a number of zip codes, but they were mostly concentrated in more of the urban northern part of the county, and not a whole lot of diversity in terms of race and age. The survey found that overall, people had positive reviews of electric-powered homes and appliances. 46% were very favorable, with 23% somewhat favorable. And it found that more respondents had natural gas powered HVAC or home heating and cooling, or probably just heating systems in a lot of cases, and water heaters also that were powered by natural gas. 52% of water heaters and 47% of HVAC systems. So natural gas appliances, those appliances were much more common than stoves at about 39% and dryers. So this finding confirms where we are going with the campaign is to focus on the water heaters and the HVAC systems, which are also the bigger energy users in the home, and so the biggest potential for greenhouse gas reduction. So that was a nice confirmation. And then we asked how much people agree or disagree with 9 statements about the potential benefits of electric appliances. And the top 4 responses were that they can improve air quality and home safety, with 73% strongly or somewhat agreeing. That these appliances are an environmentally friendly choice, 71%. That they come with incentives and rebates, 61%, and also that they are a practical and cost-effective decision. And we did also speak to the community advisory work group this summer, and back in February, and then again this summer, and heard their opinions as well. And these survey findings aligned quite well with what the CAW told us. So that was nice. And then, so how we will address those perceived benefits is really just using that information to help hone and focus in our outreach messages and make sure, we're speaking to the things that people care the most about. And in addition to the benefits, we did ask respondents to rate the biggest barriers they see that would affect their decision to switch to electric appliances. And the top 4 responses there were, first of all, the upfront cost of new appliances. And then tied with that was a concern about power outages. Those are both at 76%, at 58%, the concern that utility bill may increase. And with 46% was differences in how electric and gas appliances perform. So we're addressing these. Well, the first one, upfront costs, is the most direct factor that we're addressing through this campaign because we are providing the subsidies and discounts for the equipment themselves. And then the other concerns here about power outages and operational costs, et cetera, we can focus on these in our education with the workshops that we're going to do and the FAQs on the website, and just sharing the information with folks to help to explain and possibly alleviate some of these concerns. And then the final survey result I want to highlight is this question: if you were to participate in a discount program for electric appliances, which method would you prefer to select an installer? And the finding was almost evenly split between folks who said they would prefer selecting their own installer and those who said they would prefer program organizers to select vetted installers. And then 22% didn't have a preference between the two. So this was a helpful finding to inform our design of our campaign. And we're actually proposing something of a hybrid approach between these two options. What we're planning to do is conduct a competitive request for proposals, or RFP, which will evaluate contractors' qualifications and experience, as well as specifics on their price proposals, equipment offerings, and approach to sizing the equipment. And having this information up front will provide transparent understanding information that we can evaluate them and have in hand, so we will know that we're doing the best we can to ensure participants receive apples to apples bids from the various installers. And we're aiming to get a result in a list of 4 or 5, probably up to 5 vetted installers through this process. And so then the folks that are self-funded will most likely be able to choose their own installer from this short roster that we'll put together of competitively selected contractors. And so we're continuing to refine this and discuss this approach a little bit. It's different from what Energize Olympia did because they only had 2 installers. Now with the size of our campaign, we're going to have more and are thinking it's probably the best approach to allow participants to select. So in a sense, then we're combining these 2 approaches, and we can talk a little more about that if you have questions at the end. So after the resident survey, we also have been conducting interviews with more than 10 potential partner organizations, which are listed in the memo provided in your packet. And here are a few highlights. Some of the agencies, organizations that are really working in this space, doing these types of campaigns, emphasized to us the importance of the educational workshops and at the beginning to inform people of the technologies and also the process of home electrification, and then the ongoing customer support throughout the program to kind of do some hand-holding and guidance to folks. We also heard the message from a few different experts and stakeholders that it's recommended to simplify and streamline our offerings and processes, especially given the fact that we are creating a 5-jurisdiction campaign. And I'm saying 5 jurisdiction because the little surprise here is that City of Tenino is joining the campaign with the TCMC jurisdictions too. And I'll show you the funding chart that they're bringing some funding to it too. So with 5 jurisdictions and multiple technologies, it's kind of complicated already. So as we're getting closer to launch and constructing and, you know, framing this campaign, we're trying to focus and not and simplify where we can and be consistent and streamlined. We've also heard from agencies that work with low and moderate income populations that the recommendation is 100% cost coverage to reduce barriers for those low income homeowners. But there's been acceptance and agreement in doing a partial cost share for the 80 to 120% area median income, so that moderate income level. And Dominic will talk a little bit more about that too. And we've talked with folks in the weatherization space and learned about that. We were considering using some of the funds to subsidize weatherization, but have moved back from that for the reason of not to complicate things too much, but also just really learned about the costs involved with weatherization and the required expertise and necessary prerequisites. So we're not going to go into the weatherization very much at this time, aside from some kind of limited improvements that Dominic will tell you about too. And a couple of more items here, just that we should be continuing to talk to other providers, including our utility and other folks like Orca, Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency, who has a rebate, and other agencies that have rebates as well, to continue to make sure we're aligning and including all the rebates as we go along. And some messages about outreach as well. I have one more slide here, which is to share the funding. We have two main sources of grant funds for the 5 jurisdictions. And these are split into the state HERE grants, which is home electrification and appliance rebates, and then the EECBG, which is a federal energy efficiency and conservation block grant. So for the HERE grants, the first column is the total amount. These are formula allocations that each of the 5 jurisdictions it has been awarded from the State Department of Commerce, totaling just over $2 million among all of us in Thurston County. So that's pretty exciting. We can spend up to 15% of that on administration costs. So that leaves just about 1.4 million, for which we plan to direct towards the heat pump space conditioning system subsidies. And then the federal grant, EECBG, is much smaller and has only been awarded as a formula allocation to Thurston County, Olympia, and Lacey. However, Thurston County's allocation can go towards residents in the smaller cities as well as unincorporated. And that 318,000 we plan to allocate towards the heat pump water heaters, because those are a bit less expensive. We're also pilot testing that because this program hasn't done that in the past. And a couple footnotes here, just that City of Olympia may allocate some of their HERE funding to their current 2024 campaign, and City of Lacey is dividing their HERE funding between this and their existing matching rebate program. And I am going to turn it over now to Dominic. If you're ready, Dominic, there you are. And I'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So getting into the equipment and services we'll be offering through the program, this campaign is going to be focused on heat pump technology, since our background research found that heating and cooling, as well as water heating, were the highest energy consuming end uses for households across all energy fuel types. This will be done by offering ducted as well as ductless heat pumps in order to reach a broader population of homeowners, as well as heat pump water heaters as recommended in our background research report, which included a building stock analysis. We'd also like to flag that the campaign will cover the cost of electrical upgrades and that limited weatherization in the form of duct sealing as required to enable these retrofits for subsidized installations. Just some additional notes are that the minimum equipment efficiency requirements are going to be set in our installer RFP and are based on alignment with PSE and federal incentives to leverage any other opportunities for savings as much as possible. Another piece is that our program installers will provide a free site assessment and recommend appropriately sized equipment for each home. The installers are required to submit any equipment sizing reports or load calculations to Energize Thurston staff, just for maximum transparency and approval before doing subsidized installations. The installers will also inform participants of any potential weatherization needs that could improve their equipment efficiency or comfort, which would be air sealing or insulation as part of the site assessment process. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the program is going to have two primary pathways for potential participants. The first would be an income qualified pathway, which offers subsidized equipment and installation services for low and moderate income households. These participants would benefit from the free program workshops, guidance on incentives, customer support, and streamlined access to site assessments and installations. This pathway would be coordinated with South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity in a similar way to the Energize Olympia program, where Habitat handles income verification and conducting site assessments with the program installers for quality assurance. The second pathway is for participants who are above the income qualification limits. These participants wouldn't be receiving a direct subsidy like the income qualified participants, but would be able to take advantage of some other benefits, which would include a bulk pricing group purchase discount on qualifying program equipment, those same educational resources on incentives and energy efficiency financing, as well as the streamlined installations. And the TCMC staff team will be providing customer support and installer oversight throughout the program. Next slide, please. So here's a description of the income qualification requirements and offerings for each pathway. We're recommending to continue full cost coverage for low income households below 80% AMI, and that partial subsidy for moderate income households between 80 to 120%. What we've found is that we're recommending a partial subsidy that would be 80% cost coverage up to a maximum owner contribution of $2,500. And just for context, 80% AMI is approximately $90,000 annual gross income for a 4-person household, and 120% AMI is around $135,000 for a 4-person household. The funding for the subsidized installations would be provided at a first come, first served basis, but we intend to reserve at least 60% of the grant funds for the below 80% low income households. Participants who are above that 120% AMI limit would need to self-fund their installation, but they would still get that group purchase discount and access to utility, state, or federal incentives. Next slide, please. Yeah, so based on the engagement numbers we've had from Energized Olympia 2023 and 2024, as well as the amount of funding we have and the geographic scale for Energized Thurston, we've set some approximate goals for outreach and installations. We're hoping to engage at least 600 residents via the community workshop series, which will be available online and in person. We're hoping to do 60 to 70 fully subsidized heat pump water heater installations for LMI participants, 70 to 95 subsidized heat pump space conditioning installations for low and moderate income households, and about 150 discounted and streamlined equipment installations for self-funded participants. Next slide, please. So Energize Thurston is going to be a collaborative project that has a lot of program partners. This would include the TCMC jurisdictions in the city of Tenino, providing grant funding for the subsidized installations, supporting campaign administration, as well as outreach and marketing. There would be a lead TCMC jurisdiction, which would hold the contracts with the installation partners, which is planned to be Thurston County. And there would be South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity, who is providing income verification and general coordination for the households receiving subsidized installations. Habitat would also help with program outreach, installer recruitment, and has additional grant funding they can leverage for more subsidized heat pump installations. Next slide, please. We're also planning to partner with installation partners that would be selected through a competitive RFP process held by that lead jurisdiction. These installers of energy efficient equipment would be providing information about the technology at the workshops, conducting site assessments, providing the installations, and offering streamlined access to any financial incentives and rebates at time of sale to reduce the upfront costs to program participants. And finally, we're also coordinating with Puget Sound Energy to provide rebates for energy efficiency retrofits, which includes heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. These incentives will be leveraged by the installers to reduce the cost of installations and allow Energize Thurston grant funds to provide more installations for low and moderate income households. And I'll pass this back off to Rebecca.
All right, thanks, Dominic. so these are our next steps for the launch. Dominic, Julia, and I are the core project team, and we're working very closely together on this timeline. We're right now starting the contracting, working on that RFP that we've told you about, as well as an interlocal agreement among the 5 jurisdictions to set the framework and roles and responsibilities for joint implementation, and as well as individual contracts between each jurisdiction and Habitat for Humanity to pass those grant funds through so they can administer the subsidized installation. So lots of contracting that's happening right now. I have been leading that part with support from the team, and Julia and Dominic are leading up developing this communications plan and outreach materials. We're really grateful we can leverage the existing brand that Energize Olympia has been using and just make some changes, make the colors match our color scheme for TCMC, and obviously say Thurston and some other changes. So that's exciting. We're getting that in process and putting together a comprehensive plan for outreach. And then in January, we'll be moving forward to the administrative pieces and taking the tracking system that Olympia has used and modifying it so it can be used for the larger program and starting to get that marketing out in the community. And then aiming now to launch in February, if all goes well with the contracting. That's the big, time-consuming part. But that's what we're aiming for, is first quarter of 2025. And the funding currently goes through the end of June. So that would be our window for running the campaign. After that, Julia will still be here in her fellowship through the end of 2025 and can help evaluate and develop a plan for continuing this and looking into funding to make this hopefully not just a one-year campaign. So with that, we will pause and take any questions you have for the team. Thanks for your time.
This is great. Anyone with a question? Eileen, I'll pick on you. Do you have any questions?
Well, I think I wrote a note to myself about with job force, and that with both of these presentations, the need for inspectors and installers. Do we even have them qualified people in our community? And then I had written down EDC as far as helping out. How do you find those type of people to be able to support this program as well?
Those are good questions. Pack Mountain Chambers, some of the pre-apprenticeship, especially if you've got competitive RFPs coming in. My imagination is that they may need to up their staffing if they get it. Yes,
sorry.
I see Rebecca.
Was that a question for, I didn't catch the last part of your question, Lisa. Was that?
Well, it kind of goes to what you were saying, is that the competitive RFP would be interesting to see how they're going to generate the workforce to manage this, as well as train future installers as well as educators. And how
Right.
Who are they going to engage to get that training?
Yeah, it is a really good question. It is in the forefront of our minds because I see Dominic nodding that Energize Olympia for their citywide program has received 4 or 5 proposals and chosen 2 out of those. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's correct. So
Yeah.
in Energize Olympia 2024, we received 5 proposals from different HVAC companies for the installation of ductless heat pumps. We ended up selecting 2 of those. And for Energize Thurston, since we're going to need to reach a broader range of contractors, since we're expanding the equipment to ducted heat pumps, duct sealing as we need to, and then heat pump water heaters, we're planning to work with Puget Sound Energy to do some outreach, get this RFP out to their trade ally and recommended energy professional list of contractors. And we're also leveraging the Switches On, which has a contractor finder tool with a lot of folks who are serving the Thurston County area. And we're also starting to make some connections with the Olympia Master Builders Group, who are hoping to help us distribute this RFP to their network of folks too.
Good.
I was curious too, how you came up with the math as far as how many people you'd be able to serve. Because it seemed on $1.4 million, it seemed like, you know, you'll actually, that's quite a few people, I think, more than I expected that you'd be able to do that. So where did you come up with the math as far as?
Yeah, good question. It goes faster than you might think. And the total state grant amount was two million. And then with the federal it was like 2.3 million, but then some of that is for administration. So I think it's like 1.7 million that would actually go to the subsidies. And doing 100% cost subsidy of the ductless systems, the average is around 10,000 per ductless heat pump. But the ducted systems can go up to 25,000 average. And then the heat pump water heaters are about 4,500 average. So we just took that grant funding and did kind of an estimate. We don't know exactly, you know, how many of the ducted and ductless we're going to get requests for based on the demand, but I think we assumed it would be around half and half, and then we just based those estimates on that.
I also want to add that it's kind of a conservative estimate that's not counting any PSE incentives that could be leveraged as well. So.
Yeah.
May I comment again, Lisa?
Yes, please, please.
So
That's
I
perfect.
think that on the right track, but understanding the cost of labor has almost doubled in the contracting as well as the inspection. And, you know, I think we underestimated the actual cost of, back to the home energy score, of what that inspection will cost because of the cost of labor and travel and all the overhead. And the same thing with the energized Thurston is it's basically doubled in the last 4 to 5 years is what we're seeing on the actual cost of the personnel. And we have an entire population of contractors aging out and retiring. So there is a gap here on the skill level. And that's what we're seeing. We're trying to get remodels done and, you know, any type of thing to improve the built residential environment. I'm not involved in commercial very much, but that's be conservative. You know, understand that those costs are pretty, but Dominic, I'm sure you and Rebecca see that already. Is the labor cost and the available labor will really impact this.
Yeah, these estimates were based on just the experience in Energize Olympia, and then some of that stakeholder engagement. Those interviews were with other program administrators of similar programs in King County, the East Side cities, Whidbey Island.
Good. Okay.
Island County. Yeah.
Yeah. This is good. And by the way, bringing Tenino in, Gold Star, I mean, if we can bring in more jurisdictions from Thurston County, the more the better. Because we shouldn't just focus on the 3 big cities and the county as a whole. So whoever did the reach out, thank you. That was perfect.
You can credit Mayor Dave Watterson for that. He did it himself.
That's great. We should at some point reach out to Yelm, because isn't Yelm one of the per capita, the fastest growing towns in the county at this point?
Yeah, I think that's right. We've been in contact with some folks in Yelm, and we'll talk more to them about how we can promote it there as well as in the other small South County towns, cities.
That's good. I'm really impressed with these 2 programs coming forward. I appreciate that they're coming forward simultaneously and the work that goes into that. And Julia, Dominic, and Rebecca, thank you for all of you for this work. At some point in the future, it'd be nice to know how we're generating future workforce skills for our own community members, high school students, AA students, and those that are transitioning to other jobs, and how we can leverage this program to do that. That would be kind of cool, marrying it to some of the EDC work and chamber work and Pack Mountain. Because it's the 3rd leg of the stool, is how do we keep the labor force going and the skill. Anything else from the committee? Okay, thank you. Great presentation. They've been a lot of fun to see this come forward. Okay, we're going to move on to our standing agenda items. 5A is Community Action Work Group Update.
Hey everyone, so just a quick update for the Community Action Work Group. You actually have seen a significant amount of their work tonight. We have spent a lot of time with them going over the Home Energy Score model ordinance and Energized Thurston. So a lot of conversation, a lot of really valuable feedback from that group has gone into the two memos that you all just saw. Additionally, we have been having some kind of internal conversations about updates to the charter, just to make processes flow better within the group, and had some conversations about the recruitment rubrics and how that process works for people to join the CAW. Finally, the CAW has also been giving a lot of input on updates for jurisdictions in regards to their climate elements in their comprehensive plans. Again, really valuable feedback and a lot of great conversations. And that's all I have.
Great. Any questions from the committee to Daniel? Community Action Work Group. So we got Kim here. She can answer for us. Okay. Now it is 5B, the jurisdictional sharing. And I'm going to start reverse order. So we'll go with Tumwater first.
I'm glad you chose us first because I have an update for the region that I meant to say in the announcements earlier, but did not get around to it. Our 2023 Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative annual report is now live on our website. And because I'm personing one screen with the public here, I'm going to ask if any of the other members of the staff team could drop the link in the chat, please. We'll be sending out a newsletter here in the next coming days with that link to the annual report, but it is on the thurstonclimatemitigation.org website right now. Some Tumwater updates. We have deployed the solar-powered off-grid EV charger at Pioneer Park, and it is now available for free for people to utilize. Thank you, Pamela, for putting that in the chat. We have our story map for our climate element, or our online open house. I was told today that we're closing that on Halloween, so please do use that, interact with that. There are a number of surveys and questions on that story map for climate element, but regardless, anyone can always reach out to the comp plan at ci.tumwater.wa.us with any feedback. We got a Department of Commerce grant to do a solar plus storage feasibility assessment for both of our fire stations. So that will be 2 more buildings that we'll have some preliminary designs for solar plus storage, should we be able to access some funding for the construction. And we also got another Department of Commerce grant to add 10 more EV chargers to support our fleet and stub out an additional 3. And we'll be starting that work very soon. That's my updates for Tumwater.
Fabulous. I appreciate this updates. It's always fun because I think when people are making the assessment that we're not getting work done, they should really listen to this section of the meeting and how much the work is getting done with the different jurisdictions and how hard the staff is working. So Rebecca, you're right. I'm going to you next.
Okay, well, in addition to all of the TCMC initiatives that you've heard about today that are keeping us very busy over here, we are kicking off our, well, my first grant that I've actually gone through the process of have executed, and now the project itself is starting. So that's exciting. And that's a grant from Department of Commerce for fast EV chargers and level 2 EV chargers for the public at the Ag Park, also known as the Southwest Washington Agricultural Business and Innovation Park that Michael mentioned earlier, which is a partnership with the EDC and City of Tenino, as well as TCAT. So we're very excited to get moving on that and aiming to get those chargers installed in early 2025. We have received 2 other Department of Commerce grants that are in the process of kind of getting the procurement in line and getting the projects underway. And those are very similar to what Alyssa just announced. I think we received the same grants, which are for a solar feasibility study of 10 sites on county property, and then a grant for EV chargers for county fleet vehicles at 2 sites, including our atrium building and at the Waste and Recovery Center. And then also we're working fast and furious on the comprehensive plan, climate element, as well as all the comprehensive plan chapters. And you can find the draft climate element is now posted on the Thurston 2045, thurston2045.org website. And it's going through Planning Commission review this month and next month, and continuing to receive public comment. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Pamela.
I've got a couple of updates for the City of Olympia. The first one is a quickly approaching deadline for our 2024 Energize Olympia program. That's our heat pump group purchase program, and it is closing at the end of October because we're going to be gearing up for that countywide program early next year. So this is our discounted heat pump program, and it has a limited number of no-cost installations for low-income households. And we always like to remind folks that you do need to be an Olympia resident in order to be eligible for Energize Olympia. And you have to watch the workshop on demand in order to qualify for the program discounts. And the last chance to watch that workshop and then apply for the program is October 31st, 2024. So still a couple more days to watch that and get your application in if you would like to participate in this year's program. And folks can learn more about it at olympiawa.gov/energize. And so that's our first announcement. Second one is, like many of the other jurisdictions, we are working very hard on the climate element for our comprehensive plan update. And I wanted to share that we had a community open house for this on October 16th, and we had a great turnout. About 40 people in attendance, including an entire evergreen policy class, which was very exciting. And we received more than 200 comments from the community at that event. So we're really busy working through everything that we've heard and incorporating that feedback. And for folks who weren't able to attend, you can visit our the project webpage to read more about what we're working on and share some feedback there as well. And that is can be found at olympiawa.gov/climate2045. So we've got a portal there where you can continue to provide feedback at any time that's convenient for you. And just our last, this is a fun fact. We were doing the math and we realized that we've been awarded the City of Olympia was awarded nearly $3 million in grant funding this year to support a whole range of climate initiatives for things like home electrification, EV charging, solar installations. So we're really excited about that. And all of that, those projects are moving forward kind of on different timelines. And all of this was supported with funding from Washington's Climate Commitment Act through several different grant programs. So you can also let us know if you have questions and we can share more information about those. And that's all I have from Olympia.
Okay, are we ready to go, Lindsay, for Lacey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am putting a link in the chat. So nothing new, comp plan stuff is underway. We have our first survey out to the community. I just put the link in the chat for that survey, which includes some questions on climate resilience, and then just overall comp plan, transportation, the transportation plan, the utilities, development, economic development. And so we're trying to keep that open as long as possible, but obviously take it as soon as you can, folks who are listening out there. We finally are underway to upgrade our EV chargers. We had an EV charging project start about a couple years ago. We had some issues with getting the EV chargers, the contractor, things like that, but we're back on track. And so I think the first part of this month, the city chargers will be shut down at City Hall to get replaced, and then we'll start making our way around the city installing those. So that's really exciting. we will start listening sessions mid-November for our climate resilience update, or our climate resilience sub-element. So working with our consultant, the first thing we're kind of going to do is some technical, working with some technical folks in our community to talk about climate hazards, climate emergency planning, things like that. Really excited, have some folks on board to do those listening sessions. And then, yeah, if you happen to be at Winter Fair Fest, North Thurston High School this Saturday, some handful of community and economic development staff, depending on what time you come by, will be there to talk about our comp plan and engage with our community. So excited to do that. And then PSC will actually be restarting their electrification program, I think the 1st of November. I think that's the last I heard. I don't know if that's official, but I think that's the date they were shooting for. And then we're working with PSC, obviously, to restart the Lacey matching rebate program for electrification, specifically starting January 1st, 2025. So we're trying to get that contract in place, which will use the other half of the HERE funds that Lacey has been granted through Commerce. So yeah, exciting stuff. 2025 should be a really long and awesome year.
Fantastic. Any questions from the committee for any of the other jurisdictions?
Just a comment, I was able to go to the ribbon cutting for Tumwater's solar powered EV charger, and that thing is super cool. So go check it out if you haven't seen it in Pioneer Park.
Yay.
Way to go, Tumwater. Yay. I just have to give a shout out. Since we did the reorganization, well, I'll just finish my thought if that's okay with you, Carolyn. Since we did the reorganization of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan and getting our staff on board and coordinating, I feel like we've really jump-started this plan. And I just want to appreciate all the staff and all the jurisdiction. And I'm going to appreciate Tenino for jumping in and being part of this process. This is how it gets done. And I just appreciate you. That's what I want to say to the staff at the end of this year and all the work you've done and you do for our climate mitigation plan. Carolyn.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And I echo all of what you just said. I think it's great. And I just wanted to do one little tag on to Lindsay's report for Lacey. Lot has agreed to sell Lacey a wooded 5-acre tract across from Camachin Middle School. It's on Mullen Road. And we are in forging agreement with the Thurston Housing Authority to develop a 60+ unit low-income housing project there. And it's very exciting for a number of reasons. Obviously, more affordable housing, but it ticks a lot of boxes too. It's right on a bus route. It's right across from the elementary school. It's within walking distance of grocery and other retail. So it's a really great thing. So I'm hoping that we can make all the hurdles come together in order to meet the Housing Authority's tight deadline on some federal funding. But it's exciting.
Way to go, Lacey. You're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone in the affordable housing and energy efficiency. So thank you. That's great. When the region works together, we get stuff done. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I will adjourn this meeting for October 28th. And we will be back together, I believe, in January, if that's correct from a staff member.
We still need to set the 2025 calendar, but that'll be getting worked out shortly.
Okay. Excellent. And there's no expected meetings until next year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Hey, Carolyn.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that there's a very good chance that Lisa will not be with us because she'll be off being a legislator. And I just want to thank her for all the work she did, the vision work and her leadership, and the time she devoted as chair to help bring this group along. So let's just hear some bouquets for Lisa.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. It's been a team effort. I'm not deflecting, but it really has since 2018, from TRPC to staff to everybody on this Zoom. Ty's been part of it. Carolyn, you've been part of it. It's how I mean it. It's how we get it done. It's a team. But thank you, and this group is one of my babies, so I appreciate it. You guys have a good Thanksgiving, and we will see you on the flip side.
Okay. Bye.